Okay, so back to PayPal. LinkedIn started as a online network and grew to a significant number of users. Before then, they began to, it originally started as a networking tool, and then they started connecting employers and becoming truly a platform business. And then many of you may be familiar with Fiverr. Essentially, it's a freelance graphic design platform, but it connects the graphic designers with people that are searching for design, primarily individuals and small businesses. And so you may be wondering, what does this have to do with healthcare? Well, the trend is really to move towards healthcare. And so when you think about beyond the pill and what that means, bringing in an ecosystem, there has to be something that kind of provides the foundation for that, and that is essentially a platform. And so the trends that are currently happening, or that I am seeing, is that regardless of the business that you're in or the disease state that you're working in, the burden and the complexity of managing that seems to become more difficult by the year. And with that, that means that there's a huge volume of inefficiencies that continue to grow in the market, and that care delivery continues to be extremely fragmented. If you couple that with the significant venture dollars that has poured into healthcare over the last 5 years, and you can see that there are literally thousands of companies, startups, and solutions that have started to grow. The challenge is that all of these startups really don't necessarily have the funding, the knowledge, the expertise to be able to commercialize at scale. And that means that they are looking for partners to be able to help them do that. And that's really, again, where a platform comes in, is in that pharma med tech companies have the opportunity to partner with these organizations. The value prop being that large organizations have the commercial knowledge, the ability to help these companies scale, but you have to have a platform, again, in order to be able to do that. And so I'll get into much more specifics around that here in a few minutes, but wanted to give you an idea of also the focus for how to make this happen. So within organizations, building or creating a platform business can seem like an insurmountable task. And so I think the first thing that you need to think about or consider is what's the problem that you're trying to solve, and who is the stakeholder. And so are you creating for a patient, HCP, or ultimately from a business model perspective, the payer or a payer organization? And in many cases, I think you have to consider how you can create a platform that addresses the needs of each of those stakeholders in the process. It does require a lot of thinking and effort to determine kind of the best way to approach this. And you also need to make sure that you are creating a clear business model and plan in order to kind of move forward with building out a platform business. So I want to take just half a step back for a moment and just talk about platforms and platform attributes, because in fact, 4 out of the 5 world's most valuable companies have evolved into platform companies. And when I say evolved, that means that they did not necessarily start there. So if you think about Apple, and I think most people traditionally think about Apple as a computer manufacturer, and then more recently as a phone device manufacturer, but really their services business is what has turned them into a platform business, because the device stands in between a consumer and the app developers on the other side. And so that is a significant portion of Apple's business, and really what makes them a platform. Same with Microsoft, in that they have turned into a B2B SaaS company. Previously they were a software provider, but if you recall, their CEO, when he took over 5, 6, 7 years ago, is that he committed them to moving everything to the cloud and then giving away a lot of their software. And this is really what has made their growth significant over the last few years, but it has also turned them into a platform business. Google, and then Amazon. And Amazon is interesting because it became a platform business when it really opened up its selling capabilities to resellers. And so it then became a platform business as much as their AWS business as well. And so the key attributes of a platform business is that it makes a connection between a buyer and a seller. And so kind of the old offline analogy you could think of is a platform can be thought of as like an old market bazaar or a farmer's market. People go there to buy goods, people go there to sell goods, and it makes the connection point between them. There is an exchange of value, and the platform owners define the rules of engagement. And then the platform owners also provide the underlying infrastructure for this exchange to happen. And really value is then created through the connections that occur on that platform. So in the cases here, it's technology related. In the case of healthcare, it could be you're connecting a patient with an HCP or an HCP with the payer, but you are owning the connection that is occurring. So why do platforms matter? In technology, you can see here that examples of people moving towards platforms, and I think they're only now starting to become much more prevalent in terms of the conversation in healthcare. But I believe that they're going to start becoming much more prevalent going forward because the benefits of platforms are many. In particular, there's significant economic value that can be created from them, new business models. So when you bring together different products and services and solutions and then patients, you can create different products, bundle products together differently, and you can create new models and new opportunities. Platforms are also a highly efficient way of doing business because you are effectively the middleman between this exchange, and it creates new opportunities. But it also, there's from a marketing perspective, you have a captured audience, if you will. And so the effort really goes into how can you create more stickiness, how can you keep them on the platform, and how do you really provide value rather than going out and trying to fill the funnel, if you will. It reduces the friction, and platforms, when they are at scale, they are extremely difficult to compete with. So you can also look at examples like Salesforce.com, if anybody is familiar with that, and how it has grown and scaled. Once you are a user of this solution, it becomes extremely difficult to kind of extricate yourself from being on that platform. And the same with the examples here, whether that's credit cards and MasterCard and Visa. Once you are a customer, you really are incentivized to remain a customer, and you really only switch if there is a outstanding reason to do so. In terms of healthcare, I think there are a couple things to be aware of, in particular that apply specifically for healthcare as a use case, and that is to have a very clear user experience strategy. So if you are designing and thinking about a platform that is specifically for a patient, I think you have to think about how you are designing for that patient and making sure that the customer experience is equivalent to the customer experience that they may receive from other consumer products. I think we all know from digital and multi-channel and those that have been in marketing that the bar has been raised so high from a consumer perspective that when you are designing a product, you really have to take into account kind of what the expectation is for that individual. I also think that you need, from a characteristic perspective, that you have to be part of a ecosystem. So you need to think about how you connect multiple things, and you really have to take it from a patient or consumer perspective and the things that they want to do in terms of interacting with the platform. So it cannot just be you and your company and your product, but it also needs to include other products that a person would incorporate into their life regarding their own healthcare. And so whether that's a weight scale or a Fitbit or whatever, iPhone, watch, whatever, you have to make sure that you're able to accommodate and integrate those products and the data so that it can be a rich user experience for that individual. And then I think you finally need to think about the performance of it and the technical capabilities so that you can continue to grow and scale over time when designing a platform that has a healthcare application. Now, platforms are not new, quite frankly. Maybe the use of platform as a product in healthcare is newer, but certainly there are many people that are going after or trying to create platform models, platform businesses within healthcare. And so you see this within governments, certainly. Always a ton of news around the big tech players, although recent news is that they may be struggling a little bit with healthcare, which I read a little bit of that information with some delight, because I think they have moved in and not really realizing how difficult and complex it can be. And so you see news around Google or Apple having a little bit of a struggle. And then you see also kind of the EMR and the big players kind of moving in as well and continuing to try to grow from a platform perspective. Here is kind of a very similar, simple and almost academic like model that kind of shows kind of what a platform means. And so I'd like just to take a minute to kind of walk through what this means in general and what it means for a platform. So starting on the left-hand side in the orange circles, think of those as a product, a service, a solution. You could even think of that as a digital health company that you may want to work with. And in the middle is your company's value proposition, what you bring to the table in this equation. And that could be a strong commercial footprint. It could be you're a global player. It could be you have expertise in a certain area. You know, all of that comes together to create your value proposition. Then on the other side of that is the customer who's going to be buying the solutions that you may be selling. And that could be individual hospital, it could be a integrated delivery network, it could be a payer of some kind. And essentially, the platform underpins this activity. And so you might be creating new products, you might be partnering with a digital health company to bring a technology in and combine it with something else that you have. Then you have your value proposition, and then you're selling that to the health system. And the platform simply underpins this activity. It is what enables this to happen and occur. And it could be the integration, it could be the data flow, all the reporting, it could be new algorithms that you're working on. But that is what underpins all of this activity. And then at the top, you have partnering. And I believe that partnering is a critical aspect overall to kind of platform and platform as a product, because it's kind of the juice that, or the gasoline for the engine overall, that you need to have a really effective and smooth running BD and partnering function in order to help source and bring in the new partners. And that's really what kind of creates the energy behind new products, new business models, and new approaches that then you can take through and bring to the market and the IDNs and the payers that pay for it. From a evolution perspective, there are a couple things to think about when thinking about a platform overall. So you have the inception of it, the idea. So you've thought of something that you think can be a platform or something that you can carry forward. Really the next step that needs to be thought about is really how do you scale a platform? And because it's a multi-sided model, and you have on the one side a buyer and on the other side, or seller, you need to think about how you're going to fuel the platform and which side you're going to fund first. So there is this little bit of a chicken or the egg. And so I guess an example would be, do you fuel the side with the startups or do you fuel the side with the IDNs? Meaning, do you get the IDNs and the health systems and hospitals on board and do you incentivize them to do that? Or do you really incentivize the healthcare companies, the startups, and get multiple ideas, multiple products, multiple solutions, get those ready before you engage the IDN and the healthcare system? I would suggest that you probably want to fuel the product development side of it before you engage the IDN side. But that is something that I think you need to think about, that most platforms you have to grow and scale one side before you can grow the other. And that oftentimes that does require some incentives. In a channel business, that's kind of maybe market development activities, or you have to invest really to incentivize people. If you're working with startups, maybe you're investing in them. Perhaps you're making bets with many startups and some of the technologies that they have, so that you can then create new products and bring it to the other side. As I mentioned, I do think it really requires an effective partnering strategy depending on your organization and how you operate. Really having a robust approach and methodology for how you identify new companies and partners, I think, is a critical aspect to really fueling this platform. And so you need to have simple things like effective market scouting and scanning, partnering criteria and capabilities. How do you onboard new partners? How do you bring them in quickly? How do you provide a good experience for them? Certainly keeping them happy is a part of the overall equation, and it is all a factor in how well you can ultimately scale. There are a couple examples here of other platforms such as Upwork, which is similar to Fiverr in that it's a freelance platform, and then you have Dropbox and kind of storage and memory. Next, you have kind of monetization, and once you have built some scale, you have then the ability to start to monetize the platform overall. And there are many different ways to monetize, and frankly, new business models being created all the time. But a few simple ones that you can think about are transaction fees, ongoing subscription fees. And these are things that you can think about that really kind of lock customers in. You can provide different premium options within your platform that can create a little bit of difference in terms of revenue generation. And then you can always bring in advertising or other complementary options and fees. And so here are also a couple different options, or examples rather, of platforms. Apple mentioned earlier, but Square as a transaction platform. Coinbase is another one. And then finally, you need to think about how you're going to protect your platform and then also continue the expansion of it. And this is probably one of the hardest parts to kind of conceptualize and think about. Once you've kind of reached some critical mass, you will need to spend some time figuring out or thinking about how you can protect your platform from competitors, because surely competitors will be coming. How you can lock in your customers, create that stickiness that keeps them with you, and then ultimately expansion. So when I kind of talk about platform, it more or less assumes a US product. Expansion can be any number of different things, whether that's going to different geographies, adding on different products, different features, or going out to a completely different customer type. Once you have that platform built, it becomes extensible, and you can extend it to other customers once you have it built. And then kind of in summary, from a platform perspective, just want to reinforce the fact that platforms in general, they're really not new. But the idea of a platform in a healthcare business is becoming newer. And I think the interesting piece is that really most companies have, to some degree, some kind of asset or product that can become or can evolve to be considered a platform. And in order to grow a platform, I think you need to think about how you can strengthen the partnerships, how it can deliver better care and potentially better outcomes, because you are connecting and you're exchanging that value, whether that's between a patient and a HCP or HCP and a payer organization. And it really, I think, opens up new opportunities for new business models, because if you are working with startups in some form, there are, again, literally thousands out there, and they are all attacking problems from a different angle and a different perspective. And if you're, highly engaged in kind of the startup market and what's happening, I think you can quickly then begin to identify and realize how some of the startups and how working with them may be able to provide some competitive advantage for you if you can incorporate their product or technology into what you're doing. The advantages of this platform type of activity is that customer retention is far greater. So a lot of the old marketing activities around retention or reducing switching, really, I'm not going to say it goes away, but customer retention becomes an easier activity because you have them locked into platform capability. It does also create new business models and new opportunities, as I mentioned, and evergreen revenue models. So once they're locked in, it can become kind of like what everybody's looking for in terms of monthly reoccurring revenue and something that's highly predictable. It also, inherent in a platform is a connected system and data. And so data becomes, I think, critically important here, and everybody is trying to gather more data, own more data, with the idea that data is king, and the more you have, the better insights that you will have. And that is actually extremely true, and a platform is an enabler to make that happen. And then you get to the co-creation of the new products, and that over time, you have the ability to much more quickly and easily be able to incorporate new products, solutions, services, if you have a platform that is underlying all of that business. And so wanted to talk about platforms today as the new killer app. And so rather, if you are chasing apps or how you can bring individual kind of products into the market, I would have you think about how a platform and the underlying infrastructure could be the best opportunity for you to launch an app successfully into the market. Here's my information. Would love to have the opportunity to connect with you and online, and certainly speak with you about anything that I've talked with you about today, or digital strategy, or anything in general. And it's been a pleasure to be with you today and share some of the insights that I've picked up over the last 18 months with you.
Thanks, Jim. I mean, this was really interesting to look at the perspective of how platforms have really are a basis of a lot of people's, daily lives, I think, based on what you've shown us. And as, standing in for the future, I think I actually love that you've hit on every single thing I was looking for in the beginning. You may or may not have seen, and those of you who weren't, the future was here to ask about connectedness, using data with technology, and customer centricity, which I think you've shown that platforms really pull all of that together and are crucial. All of those aspects are used and are crucial. But I wanted to quickly just thank you very much for your time. And if anyone does have any questions, feel free to connect with Jim offline. and get in touch with them there, or there will be a networking session after this.